He's the poster boy of forgotten loner music. You know, it's like you put it on and you're like, this is one of the best things I've ever heard in my life immediately.
Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Accolades conversation series, in which I talk to some of my favorite artists about who or what they would recommend me checking out. Make sure to subscribe or hit that like button. Holy Sons is a one-man solo band built around American songwriter and drummer Emil Amos. Amos is notable for releasing genre-bending albums according to LA Weekly music reviewer Chris Martins, and for being a prolific songwriter. One account in Spike magazine suggests he has written over 1,000 songs. Amos is a multi-instrumentalist for groups such as Grails, and Lilacs and Champagne. Amos was born of the lo-fi home recording movements of the 80s and the early 90s. I talked to Emil about Jimmy Campbell. Jimmy Campbell started in music at school, forming the band The Panthers. They supported the Beatles in January 1962. The band performed at the Cavern on numerous occasions, and one show broadcast on Radio Luxembourg saw them introduced as the Kirkbys by Bob Wooler, the presenter of the show. Sunday night at the Cavern. Wooler felt that changing the name of the group to that of their hometown would help expand its fan base. The name stuck, and the group released a single, It's a Crime, in 1966, at the tail end of the Merseybeat era. Jimmy moved on from the Mersey sound to the newly evolving psychedelic scene, renaming the band to the 23rd Turnoff. The name was taken from the motorway sign indicating the nearby M6 exit. Here he found his Liverpool roots placed him at a disadvantage, with the scene establishing itself in London. Described by Bob Stanley of The Times as the era's lost songwriter, Campbell wrote a number of songs recorded by other artists. Cliff Richards, Billy Furry, the Swinging Blue Jeans, and Rolf Harris all covered songs of Campbell's. Although Campbell did not achieve acclaim in the 1960s and 1970s, his work later came to be well regarded, with Will Sargent naming Campbell's single Michelangelo, recorded with the 23rd Turnoff, among his top 10 psychedelic records. The Guardian included the 2004 compilation album The Dream of Michelangelo in its list of 1,000 albums to hear before you die. If you're into my illustrations, this Accolades series started as an illustration book, which you can still get on our website, craterecords.com. Anyway, without further ado, this is what Emil had to say.
I was kind of surprised. You got like Ian MacKaye. You've got like some pretty big wigs in this shit.
Yeah.
Who did Ian choose?
Ian chose Daniel Hicks.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Yeah. But so yeah, I'm trying to like do these interviews. The thing is, like, my second book that I'm now working on is more hip hop and producer related, because I have a whole batch of electronica artists also. But I split them up into two books instead of one. And I'm trying to like keep the interviews going, because I notice people start to like come back to everything when I do these. So, and it's also fun to do. So that's the reason why I'm doing it.
So the hip hop book is basically the same exact formula.
But you notice an immediately different than genre names and stuff like that are coming back. So
I'm in a huge phase again of collecting those records. And I mean, actually, when you say it that way, it makes me think most hip hop fans, probably disappointingly, would probably choose a lot of the same people.
Yes.
So like when you get the hip hop like superheads, they're not going to, because they're like obsessed with records. That's the difference between in hip hop. If you talk to a big artist, you get a very random an answer you're not looking for. And if you talk to a DJ, or you talk to like sometimes I'm surprised, but I know in advance mostly what I'm dealing with. So it was the same thing with rock. Like I try to publish everything, because I also think people can answer this question the way they want. So I'm not, but of course it's, for me, some of the answers were more interesting than other answers, which is obvious, of course. So I'd actually be interested to see the choices on that, because they're gonna say Rakam, but like Are they gonna say Schoolie D, or you know what I mean? Like, how smart are they?
That's also something with hip hop artists, without wanting to be like too stereotyped, but it's
sure.
I get two answers: how much is in it for me, and second of all is, can I name myself? That's another one that I get a lot.
No, that's kind of sad. Wow. I mean, you have to, if you want to name yourself, you better be Kool Moe Dee. You know, that's kind of sad. You know, I've thought about it for a long time, and I really have to volunteer myself. You know.
Yeah, it's weird, but you know, let's jump into it. Okay, so the question was, if you want to give accolades to somebody, who would that be? Who is the first person that comes to mind, and why?
Well, I chose Jimmy Campbell because maybe when you hit me up, that was like the big head phase I was in. You know, he's kind of one of those people you get all 4 of his records or whatever, and then you're done. You know, so it's like that's all you get, and then you just try to find his like early bands and you obsess, but then there's nothing else after that, and he disappeared kind of somewhat tragically. And when you meditate on these people that are perfect to obsess about, you know, we know nothing really about them. We don't know what kind of person they really were. You know, you could kind of speculate. He was probably a little troubled from the music, but when I think about why they didn't reach success, which of course is kind of like part of the meditation, I think Gene Clark, Jimmy Campbell, and more recently, there's a band called the Cleaners from Venus that's like a kind of legendary 4-track band from Britain, and they're sort of like the Guided by Voices of the 80s. They're one of the great home recording bands. But when I think about it, if I went back in a time machine and I played Jimmy Campbell for anyone on the street or anyone in the club or anyone on the label, I think they would all just be pretty stunned. You know, they'd be like, "This is amazing! Like, how many records is it selling? Like, you know, can I see him play? You know, like, how's it? You know, is he going on tour with the Stones or whatever? You know?" And I would just be like, "No, he's not doing." I mean, you never heard of him. You know, you may never hear of him. And I think they would unilaterally shrug and be like, "Oh, that's too bad," and never think about him again. And I think there's something about the curse of Jimmy Campbell that is fascinating, because what's happening is that this Buddha or this kind of Christ character or whatever in the metaphor is walking down the street, and society is just parting around them and saying, "We have no interest in you because you're simply not famous enough. We don't care about you because we don't have the willpower to think for ourselves and create a space for you. And if it's not created for us, if it's not spoon-fed to us through the machine, then you don't exist." And there's something about that guy that exemplifies, he's the poster boy of forgotten loner music. You know, it's like you put it on and you're like, this is one of the best things I've ever heard in my life immediately. And you look him up and no one knows who he is.
How did you find out about him?
In that case, I was just in this Brooklyn record store called Human Head, which is actually a dope store. They're really cool people. And I just was flipping through the old like British folk section, and it was like, it's this bizarre cover where he's like dressed like a clown, which is just seems like so ironic because he's literally just like discarded. And I just put it on and bought it. It was one of those lucky things like Alan Hall, where I was just in a store and put on the record, and that my obsession began. Usually with things like that, you're going to hear the song cherry picked in like a film or something, but it was like 2 weeks later or something after I heard his song, like in my room, I like looked at my phone and like Steve Shelley from Sonic Youth had said Matt Sweeney gave him this song, check it out, same song. And then I think I see like, I think Angel Olsen did like a Pitchfork thing. I'm like, oh, somehow, like, we all heard about this guy at the same time, and no one was really like hit by one thing. It just kind of like he reemerged because culture was ready for him. And I'm pretty sure he's gotta be dead, but I don't know. And I'm pretty sure he experienced nothing good from all the stuff he made. He was 100% forgotten within his lifetime. And I mean, that's the funny thing is, like, I know what that feels like, to walk down the street and be at your most, the high point of your artistic inner, sort of accomplishments in an internal way, and have the world just like not even see you there. Mm-hmm. It's really a sad feeling. And yet at the same time, if you want to take a step back and just be a little bit more Eastern about it, it's like, that's the capitalist poison that you're trying to drink. And like, that doesn't mean that you weren't great. That doesn't mean that Jimmy Campbell wasn't one of the greatest songwriters in the world at his time. It just means that he didn't have a lot of money, that he didn't have lines of girls around the block like the Beatles, whatever. It's like, that's the challenge with dissecting Jimmy Campbell, is that it forces you to question your own values and why you listen to music. And that is a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. As for like what I'm doing and what I did with music, my music is not going to be heard by anybody anymore ever. But what I had is like traveling around the world, and what I had was working on it with friends. And I think that's, looking back at it, that might be the only thing that I need to get out of it. And I noticed it more with these books than I did back then. Nowadays, I get anxiety when I put out a book, but working on the book for 2 years gives me like the perfect thing. Like, it's like, as long as there's no like expectation made into it, it's perfect for me. I used to be the opposite. Like, it was like, we put something out and like immediately the second release, without even noticing, you're starting to think too much about what you're doing for some reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the big trap for a lot of artists, is that, like, and especially I can imagine if you're like a bigger artist or like the biggest artist, that the downfall after that is probably like even bigger and even, but it's an interesting story.
Yeah, I think maybe in the future there's this possibility that there'll be a positive effect of the fact that it's impossible to become famous when everyone's famous and everybody makes, bullshit that you have to weed through on Spotify or whatever, this kind of horrifying frontier that we're in. But like, maybe there's a good payoff in that the time we grew up in was loaded with total bullshit, because it was the 80s. I was just listening to that scene. I was just watching that scene in Boogie Nights last night where he's singing like, "You've got the touch, you've got the power," and it's like this inspirational rock zone. That's what we grew up in, like inspirational horse shit that you have to buy, and it was Karate Kid, Never Ending Story, like fucking Back to the Future. The idea is that you alone, you special little boy, are gonna save the universe. It was like a horrible message because it's so fucking fake. And maybe in the future kids won't grow up with that kind of fantasy as much, and maybe it'll be a good thing. I don't know.
I want to thank my guests, Emil Amos, for his contribution to my book and also to this series. You can still buy my book on craterecords.be. The second book is in the making, as you heard in the interview. Next week, on episode 42, I'm talking to Karen Leonard about John Berger. This is part of the series I'm going to be doing in association with Well the Weston for their festival, Sonic City. Thanks for listening.